A good day to you all farmers. My name is Della and welcome to our first episode of the Agribusiness Weekly Podcast, where we discuss different farm business topics to enable the requisite shift from subsistence to commercial farming. Our discussion today is on reducing post-harvest losses in tomatoes, and I'm joined by Rawlings today, our agribusiness expert, to help us in discussing this topic.
Thanks, Dela. This is an important topic as it will help farmers and also processors to know when their tomatoes are ready for harvesting and how to properly harvest them, how to reduce on and off-farm tomato losses, the right environmental conditions for storing tomatoes, the degree of perishability of tomatoes at different harvesting stages, when to pick tomatoes that are meant for processing, and when to pick tomatoes for nearby and distant markets, the methods of reducing post-harvest losses, the best methods of handling tomatoes during and after harvest. And we'll also touch on cost-effective organic solutions to protect tomatoes.
So what are some key facts in the tomato production business?
Tomatoes have a life cycle of 3 to 4 months, depending on the variety, and harvesting can continue for up to a month or more. Tomatoes should be harvested early in the morning or late evening, ideally when the temperature is around 20 degrees Celsius and the weather is dry. Good quality tomatoes are firm, they are juicy, and in higher or middle income markets, they are uniform in color and medium-sized or larger. Fruits that are intended for export should also be uniform in ripeness, color, and size. Tomatoes that are to be processed into ketchup, into chutney, puree, or juice should be harvested when they are fully red. Tomatoes that are meant for fresh markets can be harvested whilst green and they can ripen later. However, tomatoes that are harvested early have lower nutritional values. The recommended conditions for storing tomatoes are 12 degrees Celsius and 86 to 90% relative humidity. Tomatoes can spoil if they are stored at temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius for over 2 weeks, or if kept at 5 degrees Celsius for more than 6 to 8 days. Tomatoes are very sensitive to weather conditions such as wind, moisture, temperature, and chilling, which causes their color to be irregular. Also, tomatoes can soften prematurely and may fail to ripen properly and decay when kept below recommended temperatures.
Like any other farm business venture, what are the big challenges that farmers face with reducing post-harvest loss in tomatoes?
There are a number of challenges. Farmers often lack the right containers for harvesting their tomatoes, and instead they end up using wooden crates or woven baskets that then injure or damage their fruits. There's also an issue of poor road infrastructure that results in delays when transporting tomatoes to the markets. Lack of facilities where tomatoes can be stored to minimize their spoilage. Using inappropriate methods to transport tomatoes to the market is another challenge. And tomatoes are highly perishable, and a lack of readily accessible markets will result in spoilage. Our farmers tend to produce tomatoes all at the same time rather than staggering their planting. This then creates a glut in the market, resulting in serious post-harvest losses.
So let's start at pre-harvest. Are there any areas that farmers need to improve?
As tomato fruits mature, they become more susceptible to pests and diseases. And farmers can minimize these tomato losses in the field by taking note of the following. They need to closely observe tomato growth to pinpoint the occurrence of pests and diseases, and also to identify crop stress, be it due to lack of nutrients, over or underwatering. They also need to adhere to their integrated pest control program, that is including the chemical, mechanical, cultural, and other effective tools. They also need to engage in preventative measures to ward off diseases before they attack.
You mentioned about chemical means of controlling pests and diseases. Are there any organic ways to control pests as well?
Sure, Dela, I'll call these homemade methods. Farmers can use liquid soap solutions to manage aphids and thrips. They can also use cow urine. It can be stored for 2 weeks and then diluted. This is very effective in managing aphids, mice, thrips, and other insects, as well as mosaic virus and fungal diseases. They can also use cow dung that is mixed with that's 3 parts of cow dung mixed with a bucket of water, and if this is stored for 2 weeks, stirring it daily, and then before spraying they'll have to dilute it. It is an effective spray for tomato pest and fungal diseases.
Harvest losses is a big challenge to farmers. What can farmers do to reduce this?
Okay, I'll touch on harvesting, sorting, and packaging. Since over-mature fruits are easily damaged and then rot, harvesting tomatoes at the right stage helps in minimizing post-harvest losses. Tomatoes can be harvested at different stages, that is the pale green stage, early light red stage, or at the red or ripe stage. And this really depends on your market. Here are the following precautions that you need to take note of when harvesting your tomatoes. And remember that tomatoes are fragile. So first of all, ensure that your hands are clean and your containers are clean before picking your tomatoes. And when harvesting your tomatoes, gently twist them off the plant. You can use plastic buckets or nylon net bags for picking your tomatoes. Then after twisting your tomato from the plant, do not throw or drop it into your containers, but gently place it into the containers. You will then need to transfer your harvested tomatoes from the picking containers to larger containers. Ensure that your larger containers are wide and shallow. They should also be stackable to avoid putting pressure on your fruits. The large containers should not weigh more than 25 kgs. That is when they are fully packed with mature, ripe, and undamaged tomatoes. Avoid exposing your harvested tomatoes to direct sunlight. And if your tomatoes are to be transported for longer distances, harvest when they are less mature. Then on sorting, after harvesting your tomatoes, wash and sort your tomatoes according to the size, to the color, and the quality, depending on your market. Ensure that your sorting area or your operating area is cool, is clean, and shaded from direct sunlight. Always prevent contamination. Ensure the people sorting your tomatoes are clean and are putting on clean clothes. Then on packaging. Packaging adds value and increases the lifespan of your harvested tomatoes. Well-packaged tomatoes are less prone to damage. Their seen is more desirable by your consumers and they fetch better prices for you. Proper packaging protects your tomatoes from disease organisms, from predators, moisture loss, high temperatures, from crushing or even damage during transportation. There are different ways in which you can pack your tomatoes. You can decide to use plastic containers, cartons, baskets, customized wooden boxes, crates, cardboard boxes, or even plastic bottles. You can also use green leaves or banana leaves to pad packaging containers, and the aim is to cushion your tomatoes from crushing.
Very insightful, Rawlings. So after harvesting comes transportation. Any precautions on this?
Yeah, sure. There are a number of things that farmers really need to consider when transporting their tomatoes. For example, they should avoid vehicles that have a lot of vibrations because these vibrations will cause damage to their crops. And whenever possible, we encourage farmers to use refrigerated trucks to transport their tomatoes and to ensure that they are well pegged to protect them from damage when their vehicles are in motion. And if they are not using refrigerated trucks, they need to cover their trucks with tarpaulins to reduce evapotranspiration from tomatoes. Farmers can also use plastic crates to ensure safe transportation of their produce.
Thank you so much, Rawlings, for the information on reducing post-harvest losses in tomatoes. We will continue the discussion next week where we will touch on drying, processing, and storing.
Thanks, Dela. Thanks, farmers, for listening.